Imogen, thank you for talking to me this afternoon about Steinway.
Pleasure.
I'd like to start just by asking you a little bit about your first experiences of the piano and how you came to be playing the piano at all.
I jumped onto a piano stool when I was 3. In fact, it's cornerly enough my first memory. And picked out a Christmas carol with one finger, with no mistakes, and my parents sort of went, wow, and I announced there and then that I wanted to be a pianist. I was probably 5 before I actually started having lessons. And they were fairly primitive, of course.
Were you living in London at the time?
I was living in London, yes. And my parents had a Bechstein, a rather beautiful brown wood Bechstein. So that was the instrument that accompanied me in my early years. I gave up conventional schooling when I was 11 and went to Paris to live there, alone without my family, to train at the Paris Conservatoire. And there I worked with a mass of wonderful teachers, one of whom was the great Imogen Cooper, who came one day to the house when she was in London, looked at the aforementioned piano and said, she has to have a Steinway. So my father gasped, as he also had 3 other children to feed. But he dug deep into his pocket and bought me my first Steinway, which was a B. I was 13 or 14 at the time. It cost the princely sum of £1,000. Oh, that it was so now. And I fell in love with it immediately. Of course, as a child coming from a musical family, I had, ever since being very small, always gone to concerts, piano recitals at the Wigmore Hall, even in bigger halls. And the sound that I heard since being a child was the sound of a Steinway, because in Northern Europe, as opposed to in Central Europe, where you might hear a Rosendorfer or another make, in Northern Europe, it was almost sure in those post-war years that the piano you would hear in a concert hall would be a Steinway. So my whole ear was formed, my concept of sound was formed by a Steinway. Yes, in Paris at the Conservatoire I played on players and cavals, but that might have affected something a little in the formation of my technique at the time there, but the sound I had in my ear was always that of a Steinway. I now realise.
And was your earliest experience also on a grand piano, or was that an upright?
No, never an upright, always at the very least a small grand. I had some very dear friends who lived in Hamilton Terrace who had a little baby grand, French called it a couple, and I actually own that piano now. And that was a beautiful Steinway that had belonged to the Ritz Cafe or something like that. And I adored this instrument. They never played it. And I just trotted along the road because we all lived in the same road and practiced on it frequently. So a Steinway was always, to own and to play a Steinway was always an ambition for me, and I was lucky enough that it happened quite early in my life.
And so, in fact, it's quite unusual, I think, compared to some of the people I've spoken to. One person in particular started with a piece of paper with the notes drawn on it.
Oh wow!
Because they didn't have a piano at that stage.
Yes.
So to actually be able to start with a grand piano and then to move to a Steinway.
Well, I'm admiring of this nameless person because a piece of paper for me wouldn't have really got me going. I have to say, what got me going was being able to make sounds.
Yes.
Admittedly, forgive me, Steinway, not on the Steinway at that time, at the very beginning.
Yeah.
But my whole idea of becoming a pianist was because I could make sounds. I sat down and make sounds and I thought, I can't believe I can do this.
Yes.
Now, that jumped up a few levels when I got a Steinway. But for me it was the sound that made me want to be a musician. And yeah, that's the way it was for me.
And so when you first once you'd become aware of Steinway as a piano,
yes.
What sort of age were you when you started actually working professionally and giving concerts? Was that?
Oh, I was 17 or 18. It wasn't that long after. When I finished my studies in Paris, I was rising 18. And
did you come back to London?
I came back to London. I won the prerequisite prize or 2 and started off. Not fast, not meteor-like at all. It was very slow. But I gave concerts around the country poetry in the festival, not much abroad in my 20s. But I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying that it was pretty nearly always the Steinway that I met. In this or that condition, because of course what has to be said about a Steinway, or any piano, but a Steinway in particular, because it has such a complexity of structure and so many possibilities to it, is that the instrument is only ever as good as the technician who looks after it. And that is why the whole concept of Steinway is to have teams of wonderful technicians, somebody like Ulrich Gerhardt here in London, who can do miracles with the piano, and with whom you have a wonderful, easy rapport. Actually, the rapport between the Steinway technician and the pianist is a very interesting one, because unless you know fully how the action of the mechanic works, some of my colleagues know an extraordinary amount, but most of us don't know everything that has to be known.
Yes.
You have to find a language to convey to the technician what it is that bothers you.
Yes.
And you can say, the action is too slow, the repetition action is too slow.
Yes.
So he goes, dug-a-da-dug, dug-a-da-dug. What she's actually saying to me is, it's a possibility of solution A, B, C, or D. So it's for him, the technician, to find out what that is. And then he says, is this better? You should feel this, that, or the other. So you have to find a language of communication.
Right.
And when you get to build up a relationship with a technician, like I have with Ulrich Gerhardt, this becomes very easy. He knows very well what I like,
Yes.
and, well, I know what he can do because there's nothing he can't do, frankly. But this sort of rapport is as, really at a high level, is as important as the instrument itself. There's three of you doing a concert. There's me, there's the instrument, and there's the technician who's done the work during the day.
Right.
If any of us are failing, you won't hear as good a concert as you should.
Right. And when you first became, when you first acquired a Steinway,
Yes.
Were you at that stage just buying a piano? Did you buy it from Steinway?
I bought it from Steinway. I still got the certificate at home. I still got this absolutely unbelievably wonderful day it was, yes.
Right.
I bought it from Steinway.
And
New.
And so were you at that stage then sort of building a relationship with Steinway as a performer?
No, that would have come a little bit later,
Right.
I think. And of course, as a young performer, you don't necessarily always see the same technicians, and you're a bit shy anyhow, and you're incredibly concerned about what you're going to do on the platform. You don't really understand much of how it works inside. I certainly, in my very early 20s, I can't say I was really building a strong relationship. My relationship was with the instrument.
Yes.
As the career expanded, the relationship actually with the firm of Steinways and everybody in it,
Yes.
in the various parts of the world, particularly here in London because I'm based here, got stronger and stronger, and it has been always something extraordinarily special. I think we're like, at the best, it's like a family, really.
Yes. That's what I see when I see the way things work here.
Yes.
And so, what would you make any comment about the piano as an instrument?
How long have you got? Yes, I mean they're quite extraordinary. They're quite extraordinary. They have, at the best and toppest level, and particularly if it's an instrument that I like, there is really nothing I can't do on it. It opens doors and beyond, and I find myself doing things that I didn't know that I could do, that I have heard in my head and have thought about a lot and worked on my Steinway at home. But if I get to a beautiful concert ground in a hall with a good acoustic, I suddenly think, yes, that's what I've been looking for. And it's extraordinary. What is amazing about Steinways is that although they're made in factories like either in Hamburg or in New York, they all come out with a slightly different character. And furthermore, they come out sort of, let's say, 2/3 or 3/4 ready, and the technician's job is then to refine the instrument to suit the hall in which it's going to be. So there's another change even then.
Yes.
Then, believe you me, if you put 10 pianists on that one piano sitting in one hall, we'd all of us make a different sound.
Right.
You wouldn't recognise it as necessarily being the same piano. And this is what is so extraordinary. It goes to show that the variety of what it can do, helped by the variety of what we can do, maybe
Yes.
is really pretty endless, I have to say. And they have, if you bond with the personality and the character of a particular instrument, and it speaks to you, and believe you me, you know that within seconds of starting to play, literally within seconds. You put your hands on the keys and say, yep, that's the one for me. For me, it's very, very quick. I might then do a little bit of a backwards and forwards in choosing, if I'm choosing a piano for a concert. But mostly I'll come back to my first instinct. Then it's extraordinary. It's really like a love affair. I mean, it's really, you can develop, you can speak, and you're looking for something that has probably a huge range, that you can really thunder with, and that you can really whisper with. And a Steinway at its best can do all these things, as well as sheer beauty of sound, and let's even speak of it. I mean, it's breathtaking, it's absolutely wonderful. And I'm very interested as a pianist and as a musician in the sustaining pedal and what it can do, not just to slam it down and keep it there, but to use it judiciously so as to make the strings vibrate and bring out the colour of the instrument, particularly in the top third of the instrument. And you can do the most astonishing things. To be honest, I would say on all grounds, but on a top Steinway ground, what you can achieve there is really wonderful, very inspiring.
So if you've come to make a selection and you find a piano that really appeals to you,
yes,
will you then choose that piano again, or will you go through a selection again?
Good question. It depends how far apart the selection is. I mean, to be honest, if it's anything more than 3 months, I will, well, firstly I'll always consult Ulrich, because he will know, even within the 3 months, if the piano has been modified, if any of my colleagues have tried to change it, he will of course change it back, but subtle little changes might have come about, and I might not then like it so much, and vice versa with them and me, it has to be said. Anything more than 3 months, I would come back again and see what the selection was. I would home in for the one that I'd liked before, but I might think, also my repertoire changes. I mean, that which I might have loved for a Schubert recital, I won't necessarily want to play for the Beethoven Emperor Concerto. I mean, it won't be the same thing.
Yes. And when you go to a concert hall and you haven't had a choice, and you appear and there's a Steinway there, do you get a chance to work with the technician beforehand, before the concert?
I make sure that I have, yes.
And
I rehearse a lot. I do my whole program through. I don't just. I need to do everything. I need to feel exactly what it's going to be like in the hall in the evening. I like to reproduce the conditions apart from the presence of an audience as much as possible. In the morning, normally 10:30 to 1, let's say, and then I ask that the technician should be there, and we do some work on the piano. Or if I know the technician well and I have to get off somewhere, I just say, these notes need voicing and sorting out. This sounds a little shrill to me and not quite happy about the treble. And then I can always be sure that I can trust a good Steinway technician to sort it out, whether I'm actually on the spot or not.
So that's lovely. That's really very nice indeed. Is there anything else that you would like to add, or are you happy with?
No, because of the questions you asked, I think we covered most of what I would want to